have said it many a time, but ReBoot has always done a masterful job of balancing comedy, wit, action, and tension. Even when an episode is trying to be funny or light-hearted, there is still a unique and interesting story to back it up. When you finish such an episode, you don't think, oh well, that was a fun filler gag episode. You think, wow, that was such a unique tale, and it was hilarious. With that in mind, I present this story, which delivers laughs and carries some real weight. And not just because it has a giant monster in it.
Oh, look! Michael Scassi, the supercomputer. Oh, if only Megabyte knew how easy it is to find. Well, you know what they say. He got the smarts, but I've got the power. Besides, all he has to do is ask nicely.
Nullzilla was written by Susan Turner with story by Susan Turner. The main cast includes Michael Benier as Bob, Kathleen Barr as Dot, Matthew Sinclair as Enzo, Tony J as Megabyte, Scott McNeil as Hack, Gary Chalk as Slash, Shirley Milner as Hexadecimal, Michael Donovan as Mike the TV and Fawn, and Andrea Limman as Andrea. Hexadecimal seems to be back in high spirits once again as the episode gets underway. This scene is very much the writer going, Hexadecimal would have mainframe in her hands if she cared enough to take it, and wasn't completely bonkers. Which has been shown before, of course, but an important thing to bring up to remind the audience before she meets her match. Mike the TV has stayed with her for the undisclosed amount of time between Painted Windows and this tale, and is clearly there to entertain her so that she doesn't try to destroy mainframe again. In his efforts to appease her, he plays an operatic singer, which has the unfortunate consequence of shattering her mirror. And shimmering tendrils reach out from the other side and grab her. Uh-oh. Meanwhile, we see Hack and Slash in the tour, talking to Megabyte in a vent window. He gives instructions to them for a very important mission, putting Megabyte's pet Null, named Nibbles, to bed. Over at the principal office, we see Dot, Bob, Fawn, Enzo, Frisket, and Andrea in a medical room running tests on Nulls.
I do not understand, Enzo. Nulls are horrible. Why are your friends trying to help them?
Andrea, listen. This is what happens to mainframers when they lose in a game. These used to be sprites like you and me.
All of them? But the city is full of Nulls.
Yes, my child. We lost many dear friends before Bob came to mainframe and helped us defeat the user.
This is actually really sad and horrific if you think about it. Like a fate worse than death. Bob goes on to mention that he and Fawn are working on a theory that the game that nullified them contains a copy called, wait for it, a saved game. He believes if a null entered the exact game they were nullified in, a backup might be recovered and the sprite restored. This is some really interesting lore. And like in Andrea, they're diving into background details we've been taking for granted. Dot says that unfortunately they can't really test it because nulls aren't away from GameCubes, so they're trying other things to restore the lost code. Unfortunately, this actually really fascinating conversation gets sidelined by the thing coming through Hex's broken mirror. Before I go any further, I want to remind you that Hexadecimal is the most powerful being they've portrayed on this show. Nothing, outside of ego stroking and a few lucky breaks, can actually stop her. A mainframe really is helpless if she decides to actually do something. But here, she's completely helpless. Aspiring writers, take note. This is how you demonstrate power escalation in a narrative. As this creature latches onto her and begins to alter her into something else. We see the gnolls across her aisle, and even the ones in the principal office reacting suddenly and swarming her tower. They gather towards the tower like they're in a feeding frenzy. The gnolls in the lab go crazy, and both Andrea and Frisket hear a horrible, high-pitched signal of sorts coming from the island. Bob picks it up on Glitch, and all but Andrea and Fawn head out to investigate, releasing the gnolls in the lab and following them to the source. Meanwhile, back in Hex's lair.
This just in, media sprite and verminous familiar.
Nothing personal.
Threatened by strangely altered virus. News at... in this final report.
The gnolls swarm into her lair and absolutely dogpile her. We switch to Hack and Slash, Nibbles having bolted off towards the island as well. They've come to fetch it before Megabyte finds out and dismantles them. While wandering around nervously, they bump into Mike and Scuzzy, fleeing the tower. Hack and Slash ask if he's seen a gnoll, and Mike lets out a tense laugh, asking if instead of 1, how about 2 million? We see Bob and the others arriving on the bridge that links Mainframe to the island, and they see Hack and Slash flying with Mike and Scuzzy on their backs. The two Goonies tell Bob how they've lost Megabyte's pet gnoll, and Bob just laughs at how smoked they'll be. Mike breaks up that chat to point out the giant monster coming their way.
Although this is a fascinating story, I feel I must draw your attention to a more pressing matter. Really? What's that, Mike? What in the net?
At 23:30 today, the gnolls of Mainframe mounted an attack on a virus hexadecimal. She was unprepared for the assault and was easily overcome. The gnolls covered her completely, forming the monster this reporter has named Nullzilla.
Mike goes on to tell Bob the events as he witnessed them, which of course the audience has already seen. Mike doesn't tell Bob quite enough about the thing in the mirror, but to be fair, he's probably scared out of his mind. They flee into the principal office, minus Hack and Slash of course, and discuss with Fawn about what to do. Here, we get the skinny on what exactly this monster is. Essentially, the gnolls have encased Hexadecimal to isolate her from Mainframe, in an attempt to prevent the malicious parasite latched to her from doing harm. Why or how the gnolls knew to do this is never discussed. They also have no way of knowing exactly what it is that is on Hex either. The creature moving around Mainframe and smashing things is Hexadecimal trying to break free. The last thing to note here is that gnolls drain energy, aka life force, by touching you. And there are millions of them latched to Hex. Any normal sprite would be gone in nanoseconds. But, as Fawn states, Hexadecimal has transfinite power. So, the gnolls will never drain her fully, and Bob and the others need to do something.
Well, we know physical force can't hurt gnolls. We'll have to try containment.
Do not worry. I have prepared something for just such an emergency.
You're prepared for a giant monster made entirely of gnolls stomping around Mainframe?
That is correct.
How do you plan for that?
Lucky guess?
And here, the episode flips the tone on its head, as it moves from creepy monster town into comedy and parody city. And I'm not even remotely upset, because what follows are probably the most quotable reboot moments in the franchise. Every line is the best line. Basically, this is a hybrid parody of kaiju films like Godzilla, as implied by the name, and also shows like Power Rangers and Voltron. You'll see. In the next scene, we see Bob, Dot, Mike, Frisket, and Enzo all dressed up in brightly colored uniforms. Cue my favorite joke of all time.
You can't talk in these things, and I feel ridiculous.
You feel ridiculous? Look at me! I'm a gnat!
What's a gnat?
I don't know, but it suits you.
They each get sent down a Mario pipe to an enormous hangar. To further lampoon the Power Rangers, each of them is dressed to resemble bugs, like the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers have dinosaur motifs and the like. Bob's a beetle, Dot's a ladybug, Enzo's a grasshopper, Frisket's a bee, and Mike is a gnat, or if you prefer, gnat. They each have a little activation command which summons their vehicles. This stuff is so absurdly funny. They fly out of the hangar to triumphant music, and speed towards Nullzilla. They're ready for action, but not for Fawn's next instruction.
What's the plan, Fawn?
You must get your vehicles up to speed and, using the signal I gave you, join them together to form a giant robot that will battle Nullzilla.
You're kidding, right? These form a what?
A giant robot.
Uh-oh. Maybe that's my favorite joke of all time. They can't both be. Now I'm conflicted. Anyways, they shout a little Avengers Assemble mantra, and lo and behold, they're suddenly in a giant robot. Bob just shrugs and says, go figure. The team goes to work tracking down the monster and punching it around. Of course, this does nothing, because Nulls drain energy on contact. Oops.
We're managing to keep it under control, but we can't do this forever.
Use the Matic, my son.
The what?
Use the Disruptomatic.
What Disruptomatic?
Fong, we haven't got a Disruptomatic.
Just a moment, my child. Oh, dear.
Cue Andrea, who Fawn sends to fly the giant axe to them. Once it arrives, it spins up like the blades of a blender and scatters the Nulls across the area, destroying Nullzilla. It's hard to give a play-by-play in a review like this, but this is a really fun romp here, with some purposely hammy fight moves. I love it. Alas, all good things must come to an end. With the Nulls dispersed, Bob finds Hex, barely conscious, and free of strange parasites. Wait, where did he go?
Ah, there you are, Father. Now, where are those two bumbling fools?
Good luck sleeping tonight, kids. And that's Nullzilla. A big dose of lore building and raising the stakes, with a hilarious parody action section for Act 2. In a lot of ways, this reminds me of Talent Night. A chance for the creative team to just go nuts and do the visuals they want to hilarious effect. But what this has over that episode is that there are consequences here. It's not frivolity. There really is something terrible in Mainframe now. And we've learned things about nulls, hexadecimal, megabyte, and what lies out there in the web. This is, spoiler warning, the beginning of the end. It gets 3 fedoras from me.